Welcome back, Deviants, to another episode of Deviant TV. We have Micah Marquez and me, Leon, and today we're in for another great conversation. This one is about body positivity. Now, you may have a definition of body positivity. It's been a buzzword for a little bit now, but as you know how the format goes, we're going to give you Mr. Definitions for a formal definition.
Yes, and the definition of body positivity is the assertion that all people deserve to have a positive body image, regardless of how society and popular culture portrays ideal shape, size, shade, and appearance. Some of the goals of the body positivity movement include challenging how society views the body and promoting acceptance.
So I know with acceptance, we think about aspiration. And an aspirational body in the media or even in the fashion industry is something that fits into a cookie cutter standard. Even when you think about buying clothes, like how many times do we buy clothes and something can be a little different? They try to fit it to a standard. And I know you have experience in modeling where you were saying, even in not that long ago, not that distant past, where there are certain things about you that weren't acceptable, be it hair or just demeanor.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it really was an exhausting experience when I used to model. That is how I made money to support myself through college. And yeah, as a Black queer person modeling before Barack Obama became president, and alleviated many different things by simply being a beacon of representation for us. It was fucking difficult, more than difficult. It was exhausting. It was suffocating. I remember certain instances of going to castings and looking for agents and always being told that things like my own facial hair and the hair on my head were not valued. They'd ask me to shave my hair because Black hair is not a thing that agencies and agents would accept. I remember being asked to shave my facial hair because my facial hair naturally grows out like most other Black folks. So I would have a goatee, before I was able to grow in a beard, and goatees apparently are just not things that white models had. So there was already sort of this standard of beauty that it was very complicated for me to fit in. And in order to support myself through college, I found myself exhaustingly cutting my hair, both off my head, off my face. I remember also my friends and I, who were models as well, used to joke about how little we ate, bragging about having a 28-inch waist, like it was like something to be proud of when I was talking to my peers who were also models. As well as being exhausting as a queer person, I remember going to New York City before I got booked in my agency there, and my agent came to me and she said, not even gay men want gay men.
And I've heard that too. I've worked on the design end of fashion, and when we dealt with models, it was more of what is aspirational. Dark models are not aspirational during the winter. And we don't ever think of body positivity with skin tone and features, but that's a part of it. And aspiration, unfortunately, has to do with consumerism. No one is going to buy. They're basically saying your body has no value. No one is going to buy this from you. I know moving into New York, one of the first things you learn, because you brought up being queer and not gay men wanting to gay men, one of the first things you learn, Black gay New York, and just any gay New York, is join a gym. Now, I done been in a gym for years. The tittyage ain't tittying. So I'm trying to, even start finding value in myself. Like, damn, who can I date? I have to be this person. Or even with my few flings with white men, what do they want from my body? Like, what is positive about my body that they seem to seek out and fetishize? Because that's also part of valuing your body.
You brought up two really important things. One being the Adonis complex. I know you know much about this that particularly impacts the gay and queer community. Can you tell us a bit about the Adonis complex that you were just describing?
Okay, picture yourself on a boat in the middle of the Mediterranean with a bunch of other muscle-bound men who basically look the same. That is the Adonis complex, this need to look like an action figure to feel valuable, find love. I think in our Black queer community, I like to think that we have more love for different body types. We like the ass, we like hips, some of us like belly, some of us like short, some of us like tall. I'm not too well versed in what goes on in white communities, but for the sake of saying it, because we always hear they all look alike to me. And that is what an ideal body is compared to a normal body or an everyday body we have to think about.
Yeah, and the other thing that you really brought up that kind of like hit my ear was this idea of fetishization. Like we often, as people of color, find ourselves being fetishized, even in queer spaces that are heavily dominated by white folks in our community, and then we're under oftentimes this pressure to appeal to that Adonis complex. And I think that's again why it's so important for us to have spaces like Trappy Hour, like Deviant, that are dominated by and in safe spaces by and for queer people of color, right? Because the more we see ourselves as worthy of love, of acceptance, of celebration. Deviant, one of our core values is body positivity, and it's intentional because we want people to come as their authentic selves. We want them to shed the armor of labels, of their Sunday's best, and just like be proud of who they are and exactly what that is. And I know folks get that similar feeling when they're at Trappy.
And that is one of the things I do genuinely like about Deviant and these parties where you can show your body. Trappy is fun because Trappy is just free-spiritedness. But even going into Deviant, gathering my friends, I'm like, should I wear this? Can I wear this? And I know to myself it's not a big worry, but it's still nitpicky. And I know when other people are looking like, bitch, if you don't just hurry up and put that on.
Because it's coming off.
It's coming off. Hopefully it's coming off.
Yes.
It's hot. It's coming off.
Yes.
And I like to think and like to know the parties like Deviant or like Dick Appointment are changing that narrative because you can come out, you can let that fupa hang out. And it's also, you don't know who's attracted to that.
Right. I love that you bring that up because one thing I will take my hat off to our community for doing is really changing the narrative around body positivity also, right? At one point in time, it was seen as just this movement held captive by white feminism that only included larger women's bodies.
Darn white feminists.
but we have learned that we're actually like in tandem with them and have stretched the narrative when it comes to body positivity. It includes now changing bodies and identities that include trans women. It includes folks of different shapes and shades and sizes.
Yeah, and I think a good part is something like I don't plastic surgery shame. I don't change your body shame. Anything that's going to make you genuinely happy or make you feel like your best self. I know there is body dysmorphia that we have to do, and even eating disorders. So many gay men have eating disorders. Not me, because I love lasagna, but I do feel like, okay, bitch, you can't go keto today. And I'm glad that is changing in queer spaces because it's not really realistic. And it's hard to have this great body that people attain to is a lot of work. And I know the work and discipline is a value aspect of it, but some people just can't attain that or shouldn't even aspire to attain that. We should aspire to love everybody.
Aurora Lloyd, good to see you again.
Hi.
So Aurora, you're joining us again here on Deviant TV. You and I have spoken before, and I just remember being so inspired by your story. We interviewed before about body positivity, and I just thought your story was so enriched with unique perspective that so many people could really benefit from. Would you mind sharing with the audience on Deviant TV your journey and learning to just love yourself?
Sure. It was a long journey, but I think I was blessed and fortunate enough to come from a household where I was supported on being who I was, and so I just had to spend a lot of time figuring that out. And honestly, I didn't start to love my body for what it was until I started to transition, and even then, it was very, very hard because it's a mental mindfuck.
Yeah.
It's a mental mindfuck. And I always empathize with people trying to understand what it means to be trans or non-binary, because that shit is mentally draining to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, if you could take us back to when you were a kid, like before you began to transition, what was life like for you then? Just like
Well, what I want to say, on one hand, I want to be like, I was a typical little boy, but then on the same time, no, I wasn't. Because I liked like the beauty in things. Like my uncle always makes this joke of like, you would always point out the butterflies and the flowers, and like he always he teases me about this all the time. But I also like the boyish things I liked were like anime and games and like nerdy shit. But and I might play outside with select group of friends, but I prefer just being in the games and getting lost in whatever world was involved. And I didn't have to think about who I was. It wasn't until probably like middle school when people started to project who they felt I was. Yeah.
I can definitely identify with the pressures that start coming in middle school. Hormones start coming on, and bodies start changing, and people start getting aroused in different ways, and just kids start acting weird, and kids get mean.
Kids get disrespectful.
So what was it like for you to realize that you were needing or wanting transition?
I didn't want it at first. I tried to fight it. I tried to fight it so hard and for so long, because as a child, I already naturally did a lot of girly stuff, and then I had a lot of natural feminine features about myself, and I was doing everything humanly possible to evade it and not be it, because people would like, oh, your voice, they think I'm a girl, and I could grow a little mustache and like have some stubble, and people like, hey ma'am, it's like, bruh. So and oh my God, in high school, they loved to do my hair. Girls loved to do my hair, and my choir teacher, which was so ironic because he was an older gay man, he would get upset, like, stop making them turn you into a girl. You're not a girl. It's so interesting. But for me, I didn't want it. Because I was low key, I was transphobic, even though I didn't know what the hell it was. I was also a bit sexist. I didn't have the proper education of understanding like the bullshit of the hierarchies that I was being taught.
Yeah. So who helped you? Like what? I don't know if it was a beacon of light, a person,
Honestly,
someone in media.
It wasn't so much of anyone helping me. I pride myself on learning through the experience of other people. There's a lot of shit I do not want to have to go through if I ain't got to go through it. So I just learned from other people, and I think, and you know, as I know people always give it flack, but Noah's Ark was like probably the first real thing to open my eyes of like, oh, okay. And from there on, I just started to really study and research and read, and I can sit and watch documentaries for hours. Ash Strawberry. But we would just sit and I could just sit and watch them for hours and just pick up and learn and read books and things of that nature. And it was really just myself wanting to know more, wanting to understand and really understand the world that I live in and how I can fit in it.
And yeah, I read something earlier this week about the radical idea is to like be yourself in the world that's constantly trying to change you. And so it's interesting. I had a conversation yesterday with a black gay identifying man, and we were talking about how often we've learned to really take our hats off to trans and non-binary folks, because you choose to be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to change you. And I think that's just so amazing. I remember when we originally interviewed, we were talking about on the subject of body positivity, and you were talking about the women in your life who inspired you to loving your body and not thinking that you had to change your body in order to fit a certain trope of womanhood. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I didn't officially claim to be trans until my mother and my sister told me, like, you good. We already see you as sister and daughter, like you've already given that energy for a while now. We've just been kind of waiting on you, which is so funny. I think that is hilarious when parents tell you like, oh, we were just waiting for you. And kind of from that point on, I watched and listened with them, and I started to pay attention of just like, they don't have to do this, so why do I? And it's so sad. It showcased for me what it really means to have a maternal matriarchy in your household that is very centered and grounded within themselves, because then how they then end up raising their daughters turns out to be the same way. So like my mom didn't care if I got surgery, if I wanted to get any surgery or not. Like the only surgery I've gotten was bottom surgery, but she doesn't care if I do it or not, as long as I'm happy and I'm good. She always shouts me out as her daughter. She always claims like it. I couldn't have asked for a more better, blessed situation and support system.
I remember you mentioning that some folks were in the room with you when you got your bottom surgery. What was that like?
Okay. So well, I turned it into a whole little thing. So the day I went to go get my surgery done, it was private. I didn't publicize about it or tell anyone ahead of time. Beside my job and select friends and family, but I went live the day of the surgery, right before they decided to put me under, as well as I dropped a music video. I was like, here's something to watch while I'm going. And it was scary, but I felt good to have folks around me. I was just scared of like, wow, like, cause I knew I was like, all right, once this is done, I can't go back.
Yeah.
It's a done deal.
Yeah.
Girl, you sure? But I was happy just to have family around me. My mom was there, my sister was there, Strawberry was there, some other friends was there. It was good, and I'm so glad it was before COVID, because child.
Yeah, that is remarkable and beautiful to me to hear that you had that parental support, to know that your family knows and has been able to see you for so long and is able to welcome you literally as you open your eyes into a life that you actualized, you know? I think that's just so remarkable and inspiring. And now let's talk a little bit about how you continue to inspire others. I know that some folks in the industry that you've worked with, one way or another, Jeremiah, Trey Songz, DJ Khaled, Rick Ross, Lindy Lauper, are just a few names that you've worked with in propping other cishet people up. Some in our community, some not, but you are actually a music artist yourself.
Yeah.
You dropped your first mixtape in 2016 called Inside My Notebook. You have a new project coming out soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a new album. It's my very first debut album, and it's called Neptune. It's like a step up. Everything I write and record is always just a story of what's been happening. I'm very big on storytelling, thanks to like country music and honestly the 2000s. I'm not a big fan of like super short albums. Like, girl, tell a story. But it's honestly just about my journey, and my journey with myself, and how I talk about what I mentally was dealing with while still trying to outwardly date niggas, and like how, because I wasn't working on what needed to be worked on up here, I was making really bad decisions in who I was choosing to mate with.
Yeah.
And other men, and how I kind of came up and came through and came out of it, and where I've gotten to now. I'm like in a whole relationship, and it's a whole completely different world now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Neptune is coming out. I know that's another a way that you are leaving your mark on the world and on the community. Another way that you are leaving your mark on the world is also through doing community activism. And can you tell us a bit about that, the organization you work with?
Yeah, I work with Away Home America. And so pretty much what we do is we fight to end youth homelessness for LGBTQIA plus and persons of color, all youth. And we really fight to take a lot of policies and things up on the Capitol Hill. Like, we don't do like direct services and things where we're trying to actually, we're dealing with the youth face to face per se, but we make sure that we offer opportunities so that youth can actually get paid. Like, we have a leadership body, which is ideally a group of board of directors, and about 60% of them are youth, so they're 18 to 29.
Oh, cool.
You know, and then it's myself and my boss and great friend Marcella Middleton. We work together in this company, pushing it and propelling it forward. It's just the two of us right now, and we're leading the charge in making these changes and like breaking down white supremacy and just, that's just me.
Well, Aurora, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Deviant TV.
Of course.
Thank you for knowing yourself and so beautifully making a mark on this world as you leave behind Neptune and Inside My Notebook and so many other works, speaking on the March of Washington. But yeah, let's just thank you. one thing that you just brought up that I love to mention is the definition of body dysmorphia. It is actually an obsessive compulsive disorder derived from negative body image. It can result in compulsive eating, dieting, over-exercising, plastic surgery, and it is actually statistically proven that gay men suffer the most from this. We talked earlier about media and fashion and that being one of the main sources of how we got a body image, right? I certainly would say that, you know, because of our community being able to represent themselves on social media, that it has really pushed the envelope for body inclusivity.
Yeah, I love that. And even being in spaces with so many different types of people, I am openly not the most confident person, but I'm open about that because I hope I can let people know you can fix it. Like, I talk to so many different people trying to be this strong thing. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm not too sure about my gap. I'm not too sure about this. I'm trying to figure this out. Not to degrade myself and not to be down on myself, but I'm open about it because I know someone else is going through it, and I can have an intimate conversation with someone in a party setting, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, thank you for that, because I felt this way, I felt that way too. Fixing a problem takes time, or fixing something about you takes time, and a lot of times we're not open about it because we think it makes us small. And where I found it has helped me find a community, people you think are perfect, and people you think don't have any problem with attractiveness have problems. And that has helped me even with seeing people who I would give pretty privilege to. The things that they say and the things I'm like, oh wow, I feel like an asshole because I also admit I thought you just had a perfect life. But also I thank you for sharing that with me. And also people on the opposite spectrum.
Insecurity is a very real thing that the common person, everyday person deals with. And I think especially in our community where we're, again, constantly trying to conform to standards of heteronormativity and we can't fit that. Standards of whiteness, we can never fit that. We are then seeing ourselves in competition with one another and during that competition, looking at ourselves in the mirror and thinking less than. And I think it's so important, again, that we find that self-love and that confidence within ourselves. I think that is what is truly valuable about body positivity. I think that when we find that confidence and that love within ourselves, we then begin to radiate that to other people. You mentioned something when you were talking about your gap. I used to have a gap, and I now have braces. But I only bring that up to
Nene
say...
leaks me, please. This
so
is about to be
silly.
fixed.
No.
But that is a part of, I had to gain the confidence of this gap was made to be a thing that defined me that I could never get with. And maybe I might give myself some more time to do it, but I also now have the confidence to be like, I allow you to change.
I brought that up not to brag about having braces at all, but one to display that it was something I was very insecure about at one point in time that I decided I wanted to get changed. And I do think that you brought up also that if folks want to get surgery for something, they want to get something changed, it's really about how they feel about themselves. If that's going to make them move in the world more confidently, and as long as that is what they're obtaining, as long as what they're obtaining is self-confidence and self-love, I don't, get into criticizing people for getting BBLs. I'm part of the Little Booty Committee myself.
Little Booty Committee.
Yeah, and
I fluctuate. I'm thick sometime.
And Deviants, welcome back. It's your boy Michael Marquez on this episode of Body Positivity, and I am joined by the legendary Mr. Jazoo Escada.
Hi, how are ya?
Jazoo, we were first introduced to you, at least on television, during Legendary. Can you tell us what that experience was like?
Ooh, so it was legendary. It was fun. No, I had so much fun. I was with my house, the iconic House of Escada, and honestly, that was my first TV, actual something besides high school drama club. You know what I mean? And it was nerve-wracking. It was scary. It was exciting. It was shady. All the above.
Nice. Being a part of a ballroom house, can you explain what all that entails? Because we only got to see the performance, but I know there's so much more.
London in particular, my house mother, he kind of almost took me in when I was finding myself, finding one where I was gonna live, what I was gonna do with my life, what's gonna happen. And just him coming into my life just unexpectedly, like, and showing all that love that I wasn't really used to like getting in my life, was one of the biggest impacts.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Thanks.
I know, absolutely. Jazoo, you are beautiful. And there was one, people may not know this, but
my sandals.
Jazoo has been my crush since seeing him on Legendary, particularly on this episode where you were walking Body or Sex Siren?
Body.
Body.
Yeah.
And it brings me to this episode that we're talking on body positivity, because I'm watching it and I'm like, ooh, God, there he goes. And I see all the man and the hair, and I'm just like, I'm at home like, Jesus. But they chopped you. And I remember myself, as well as so many others in the living room with me, being pissed, because we're like, that's sexy for us. You became, it brought you to this conversation of body positivity and why there is a lack of body inclusivity when we talk about sexy. Can you speak to that at all?
Body positivity to me is a movement. It's more than just loving your body. It's about accepting it. It's about being happy with what you were born with. Or even if you want to like change your body, modify it, bigger boobs, smaller boobs. Well, no, what's it called, the lizard tongue? I've seen that a lot. It's kind of scary, but none of my business. Whatever you want to do to your body, it's okay, it's your body. That's what I feel like body positivity is. It's just accepting your body for what it is.
And where does body positivity within self, like where does that begin?
I feel like it begins when you're a kid. Because, what's that, the blank slate theory? Like you only know what is taught to you, or like what you experience around like your whole life growing up, or might not even know where it came from. So I feel like you have to talk to that inner kid and really figure out like your emotions. Like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? Why do I feel like my body's different than hers, even though it looks the same, but hers is better through my mind? Do you know what I mean? Things like that.
So, I mean, what was that process like for you, that undoing those voices from when you were picked on as a kid?
Still undoing, you know what I mean? I don't think there's ever gonna be a time where you stop undoing, almost, unless it never happened, but it was hard, Even, let's talk about Legendary. London and Twilight and Cheyenne and Yo-Yo, they played one of the biggest parts when it came to me even just getting out there and like showing my body and showing this and all the fun stuff. Just because they were there to support me. Like, mind you, if I was by myself and I had to go do all that, I probably wouldn't have showed up. I mean, I would have, but you know what I mean. I hope.
So it sounds like even though it begins with self, it does also help to have people around you to motivate you, to inspire you. Is that right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask
Part
you
of
to
the
speak.
movement.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to speak a bit to body inclusivity and what that looks like as a community. Does it exist? And yeah.
I feel like we're going somewhere. Honestly, like, let's talk about Rihanna's the fashion show. How just every single scene, you see a big person, a small person, a medium person, a black person, a white person. I saw someone with a disability in there, and inclusivity means including. You can't just like say, oh, these like. Now I'm getting upset because some people don't want to include people even though they act like they're inclusive. But when you say inclusive, it means include everybody.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was talking about.
You're fine. Jazoo, how do you do the work in your own personal life of being body inclusive?
In my own personal life, being body inclusive. What do you mean by that?
How do you uplift, or do you uplift other people that, because you are also a very attractive man within our community. So how do you uplift others that may not look like you, may not be?
Just being nice. I feel like, I mean, I'm nice anyways, but I feel like the nicer you are, it kind of impacts other people almost. You show people what, like how you want to treat yourself, you know, you show people how you want to be treated, you know what I mean? And some people have never been shown that, you know, so they're going to go about their whole entire lives until they're treated a certain way. Kind of like when a dad tells his daughter, or whatever gender, parent tells the kid, don't go out or date someone or marry someone who doesn't treat you better, if not the same as I do. You know, kind of something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Jazoo. I thank you so much for joining us on this episode on body positivity. How might people find you to continue supporting you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Jazoo Escada. Pretty much it's just at Jazoo Escada for everything. JAZZUL.
If folks are looking for your amazing supportive house, how do they reach out to find these loving people that can inspire you to do things that you might otherwise be afraid of?
You can find us Escadas on the floor.
Okay.
You can find us. You can find us on Instagram at the Iconic House of Escada on Instagram.
Let's talk about, I guess we have already talked about what body negativity looks like and how it impacts us. Do you think that body negativity impacts us when we come together as a community?
Yeah, I think people are attracted to a lot more than they would allow themselves to be. I know in dating, and when I'm in my earlier dating years, it was that, what am I missing out on? Like, we click, we have a good time, but this nigga over here got pecs and shoulders, and he can lift me up.
Yeah.
And sometimes I still hang on to those things, but now I'm like, bitch, you're gonna be lonely, you're gonna be all by yourself.
And that's not going to happen at all. But I will say, in pointing to how we brought up social media and how it's pushed us forward, I will say that certain technology, I wonder and question if it's brought us steps back in the ways that we have commodified people. Now we can list on apps our height, our weight, our penis size, our sexual position. And I wonder if we are missing out on opportunities to really get to know people. I think that a body positive world, even if it existed in technology, would not quantify us based on those things, but would somehow cause us to look inward and find value there.
I think, I like to think in terms of reality and what is happening. That's a big shift to change. Like, people are going to always have a preference. But I do want people to take up space and say, hey, I don't fit in there. I don't want to fit in there. What up, Deviants? We're back with a more in-depth conversation about body positivity. We're here with Oz, a 33-year-old Fort Lauderdale native who's a mental health therapist with a background in grief, queer issues, domestic violence, and I think now you're working with children and adolescents with suicidal tendencies.
Correct.
First of all, let me shout out Fort Lauderdale, Fort Lottie-Dottie, South Florida, Mid-Florida. If I left anything out, you can fill us in on that.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, as far as, I guess, maybe how I identify, I'm genderqueer, gender fluid, non-binary. So I go through different spectrums. Sometimes I feel more feminine, sometimes more masculine, sometimes I don't feel either.
And where does bunny fetish fit into that?
Well, bunny fetish is where I kind of learn to kind of understand my gender expression. And it's something I kind of started. I started exploring my femininity a little bit more. And I've kind of created a staple in my own little queer community in Fort Lauderdale. And people kind of admire it. And I've created kind of a name for myself and inspire people to kind of express themselves however they want to express themselves.
And since this is a body positivity focused conversation, we know this is a journey. So tell us about your journey.
Well, it wasn't an easy one. You know, I used to be a chubby kid when I was little. And, you know, you always hear like those negative things like you're fat and lazy and just being bullied for my size. So as I went into high school, I grew. I grew a lot. You know, I'm 6'3", so I kind of thinned out, and then I ended up getting into a car accident where it decreased a lot of my mobility, and I also got into a relationship.
Ooh, I bet
A
that
5-year
decreased some
relationship.
mobility too.
So that also created a lot of just not really like necessarily doing the healthiest choices. So I did gain a lot of weight during that time, and and then when I got out of the relationship, it was like I was this totally different person, and I didn't love who I was. But then through my life experience, like I just started kind of just accepting my body for what it is, you know, and I started realizing that there's people out there that will love you just for who you are, you know? Like I kind of always say, like, not everyone likes Hawaiian pizza or pineapple on their pizza,
Yeah.
but some people do. And I guess that's Hawaiian pizza for someone, and now I love Hawaiian pizza, and I love me and
Yeah.
everything about me.
And you were telling me a little earlier in our pre-conversation that people were discouraging you from trying to gain weight, or is that something you wanted, or?
Yeah, well, that's through the community. It was just something that, you know, once I started gaining weight, different people, you know, drag queens or just people behind the scenes. You know, I was always like this club kid who always went out, partied, and everything. And then once I started gaining the weight, I started getting this weird kind of throwback of my weight. So people would say, you know, Oz, you need to be careful. You're gaining weight, and people are gonna look at you differently. And then I was just like, what? Like, it was just something that is like, I've known these people for years, and for them to kind of push you aside, you know, because of your weight, it was like, it kind of gave me a different perspective of just being bigger.
Did you have to revisit the learning to love yourself part?
Oh, no,
with
for
that?
sure. You know, because like I said, society basically tells you that, you know, fat bodies aren't attractive, or at least in my experience. And I had to kind of learn and just kind of accept myself for who I am. I mean, this is what I have. And so for me to not take it or accept it, like, that's just negative energy and kind of myself self-defeating. So it's like, it's a battle that I had to kind of go through, and I was able to do it.
And with where you are now, what could you tell a younger Oz, like a 12-year-old Oz?
12-year-old me. You're not going to be for everyone, but you are going to be for someone. So it's like, you know, sometimes I focus too much on the negative and the energy, the negative people around me, and I just started realizing that don't focus on that, focus on the positive, people who love you for who you are. You know?
And as a therapist who deals with grief, who do you talk to about your grief, or who's the therapist? Or how do you deal with going home with these hard stories?
Well, as a therapist, I can't really talk about like what I do with my clients.
Yeah.
But my own, I guess, therapist would be like my mother, my friends. You know, they're the people that really love me for who I am, and they don't judge me for my size.
And also, I did want to talk about, you were telling me you're outgoing and you're out in the social world. Now, I know people come up to you. I look at your Instagram like, oh, wow, this is this is a person who has confidence and things like that. As me, I'm more, like, you know, I told you I'm more of an introvert, shyer person, but I also know that aspect of people saying, oh, hey. So how do you keep encouraging people with what you do?
Well, that's also surprising for me to begin with, because I'm just living my life.
Yeah.
And so me living my life, I realized that people would come up to me. So I've had, bigger figure people who just kind of want to express themselves, different, gender expression and stuff like that, come up to me and just kind of talk to me and be like, wow, you're such a role model. And it's like, I'm like taken aback because it's like, but I'm just living my life, you know? But then to kind of see that I'm making a difference within my community and kind of making that impact, and people that I don't even know come up to me and give me these compliments, like it makes me feel good, and it kind of ties in with my, me being a therapist. I help people, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But then when you get that person that you're changing their life somehow, it feels good. It gives you this type of feeling of just fulfillment, or at least in my life.
Yeah. And then what is the passion part of it? Like, I know you deal with youth that have suicidal tendencies. What brought you into that lane?
Well, as far as psychology, it was, I initially went into, I wanted to go into medical school, and it was just hard, so hard. And then I ended up trying to get a minor in psychology. And when I did psychology, it just all made sense to me. And so, I just kind of went with it, and I just find kind of some type of fulfillment helping people just be comfortable with who they are, because body positivity isn't just like big.
Yeah.
People have so many different types of issue, whether it's their skin color, sometimes darker, lighter, they don't like their nose, or they don't like their elbows. Like it is like, sometimes I hear things like through my clients, and it's like, what? Like, that is crazy. And then sometimes I'll look at the individual and I'm like, you're such a beautiful individual, but they don't see it themselves. And why? It's because people are constantly bringing you down for everything. It's like, you're too dark, you're too light, you're too pretty, you're ugly. It's like everything. And, and all of that is subjective. Like I said, there's someone there for someone, you're somebody's fantasy, as I tell my friends. It's like, I may not be your fantasy, but I know I'm someone's fantasy, and I'm okay with that.
And even because I'm glad you expanded even my definition of body positivity, because we only think about it as bodies. I never think about it as skin tone or how you think about. I feel like, you got to work through that thing yourself. So can you give us, from your therapist point of view, a body positive? What is body positivity that's not like a fake woke thing?
Well, just loving yourself, everything about you, or even just loving one part about you, I always, hear people wanting to change their skin color, or people wanting to lose weight, or people wanting to gain weight. Some people are just like, I'm skinny, and I have no ass, and I have no boobs. And I think in the community, or in Black community, because most of the people that say that are clients that I have that are from the Black community. Bigger figured, bigger butts, bigger breasts are kind of admired. So then they don't love their body because they don't achieve the stuff that they see on TV.
Yeah, that's crazy. We never think about the inverse of it. So I think it's very important to have a queer therapist of color, someone you can relate to. How can someone reach out to you online or even in your area?
Well, the agency I work for is, they get specific referrals from the hospital. So right now I'm not taking like personal clients. I am just kind of receiving referrals through my agency, but eventually that might change.
How can we follow you?
Well, if you look up my name, and eventually I plan to open my own private practice. Okay. So if you look up my name, Oswaldo Castro, I'm pretty sure I'll come up there. I mean, there's not that many Oswaldo Castros.
There might be. You went for a lot of them. It was so great talking to you. I hope people got insight from this and expanded your definition of body positivity, because I sure did. And I hope to see you again. It was great talking to you. Love a hometown person.
Likewise.
And see you later.
All right.
Again, y'all, we have big mouths, but even bigger ears. We would love to hear from you on this topic of body positivity. We want to welcome and invite you to deviant.live/play. On there, we're going to have surveys, and we're also going to have many more episodes of Deviant TV. We want to hear your voice. How do you feel about yourself? What are you looking forward to in the community? What does body positivity look like for you? How can we be a better and more welcoming space? So, Deviants, we love you. Love yourselves.
See you later, and be positive about your body. You only get one.
Yes, God.